Okay, our first project we did was the pillow cover. It's a removable pillow cover. And here's the pattern that I gave you. This fits, this is for a pillow form 16 inches wide, which is the standard. But now you can also get pillow forms that are 20 by 20. So that's sort of the two standard sizes for a pillow form, 16 by 16 and 20 by 20. And our pattern that I gave you is 16 by 16. Okay, you see where it says right here, we're going to do a 3/8 seam on the edge. You cut one for this piece. Do your grain line, the direction the fabric goes. And then you also have, for your second piece, it says cut 2. And this is going to be the flaps that go in the back. And if you're laying those on your fabric to cut them, the grain line will be this way. So you would cut one here and one here. Okay, and then you notice on this, it also says a 1-inch fold line for side B. So one of the pieces that we cut, this one says cut 2 pieces. One of the sides is going to have a 1-inch piece that we fold over. Alright, so that's what your pattern looks like. So I've got some pieces here that I've already cut, and I actually cut mine bigger than 16 by 16 because I'm doing a bigger pillow. But the way you put it together is going to be the same. So here's my 2 pieces. And I did mine different colors because the back's going to be a different color. And you can do that or you can do them all the same color. Alright, now remember on our pattern it said that one side was going to have a 1-inch fold. And that's going to be... So what we do is we take our measuring tape, we measure 1 inch, and we mark it. And mark it with chalk, because it's not going to show up here. I'm just making a very light measurement with my marker here. All right, so you're going to mark it 1 inch all the way across here, and then you're going to fold it over and sew that down, make a seam on your sewing machine. Okay, so I'll be back in just a minute. I'm going to sew mine down. Stop it. Okay, so now I've sewed my seam in there, and I just folded it over, and I folded mine over a little bit more than 1 inch because I was making an oversized pillow form. So I wanted my dimensions to look right. So I folded mine over probably 2 inches, but our pattern says 1 inch. And I forgot to tell you, after you fold it over, then pin it or iron it. But you want it held in place unless you're, very experienced with doing a seam. But since this is, most of y'all are beginners, this is our beginner class, then you want to fold that over 1 inch, iron it down or pin it, and then put your seam in it. And I did my seam close to the edge, and then I went back. You can't see it here because this is such a light colored fabric and I have white thread. And then I run a seam, a top stitch right beside the edging just to give it a finished edge. Now that's only one piece that we did that to. The other piece is just raw. We just cut it. Now I did serge the edge of mine because this type of fabric frays really easily. This is actually like a sheer drapery fabric, but normally your pillow would be out of a more heavyweight fabric and fraying wouldn't be as big of a deal, and this is going to be hidden. Okay, so the piece that was folded over and hemmed, that we put a seam in on the edge, it is important that that is the first one you place down. And remember, place right sides together. See, this is the good side of my fabric, and this is the good side of my fabric. So I put the good sides together, and I put piece B, which is the one with the hem, I put it down first. That's very important. This is actually a very simple pattern, but since it's the first one y'all are doing, I'm trying to explain everything. And then piece C, the third piece, goes on last. And see, it slightly overlaps the piece that we hemmed in the middle. And just line up the edges. And then it's very important that you pin everything in place. So we're going to pin everything very securely, and I like to pin mine away from the edge so that I don't have to remove it as I'm sewing. So we would pin this pattern all together, do them through all three pieces there in the middle, because we don't want it to slide or twist as we're sewing it. Okay, so I would pin it all the way around, and then I would do my seam all the way around the edges, 3/8 to 1/2 inch seam. Okay, I'm going to show you one that I've already done. This one right here, I've already sewed all the way around the side. I don't know if you can tell it in the video because this is the back side of the fabric. I've got the good sides together. I've got my hemmed piece. I put it on first, put my raw piece on last. You can tell that, you know how I said cut the grain lines the same way? This one was cut one way and one the other way. It's a stripe, so it's obviously going to show up that it's wrong unless you do it on purpose to contrast. Okay, so before we turn it right side out, an important thing that I told y'all about in class is we need to clip the corners. I have my scissors. And that's for when we turn it right side out. If you leave, when you have a sharp corner like this, when you turn it right side out, it's going to bunch up. You're going to have a little wad there in the corner. So I'm clipping my corners, just catty corner. Make sure you do not cut your seam. If you cut your seam, you will have to go back and sew it because it'll leave a hole. It'll come apart. So do not clip your seam. I'm just clipping the little excess material there off on the corner so I can turn it right side out. Okay, now the fun part, turning it right side out and see what we've got here. So there we go. We've already got our pillow cover halfway finished. I'm just taking my fingers and pushing out the edges. See how it's making a nice pointy corner because I clipped that fabric so that it's not a big wad there. Okay, so this is what it looks like. So this was the point in putting the hem on one side. Now that it's all turned right side together, this is a finished edge. And like I said, it's very obvious on this one that the two patterns were cut in different directions so they don't match. This one should have been cut long ways like this for the whole pillow, everything to be in the same direction. So I did this one wrong on purpose to show y'all what I mean about following the grain line on a pattern. If it has an arrow showing you which way the pattern goes, that's how you need to cut the pieces out. Now, you can do it on purpose for contrast. So I'm not saying that you can't ever do that. It's just, you know, if you're trying to match something, that's the reason for those arrows on a pattern. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to put the buttons in. So we measure the overall width of our pillow cover, and this one is 16 inches. I want to put 2 buttons in. So that means there's going to be a space here, here, and here. So 3. So I would divide this by 3. So that would be a little over 5 inches. So I'm going to measure 5 inches and mark it. And then I'm going to turn this way and measure 5 inches and mark it with our chalk. And that leaves the middle 6 inches. So that's okay. We're just wanting roughly an even. Okay, so now we've got to cut this is where our buttonholes are going to be. But we want our buttonholes to be cut long ways. I know I mark it that way because I measured, and I shouldn't do that because that confused some people in class. But we're going to cut our buttonholes long ways. Now you want to make sure how wide you cut your buttonhole corresponds to how big your button is. If your buttonhole is a lot bigger than your button, then obviously it's not going to hold very well. So here's one that's finished. And you can see this size button. So see, the buttonhole is the same width as the button. So you want to pick out your buttons first, and then lay it on there and so you'll know how wide your button is. Now to cut through it, this is actually kind of a hard part. You want to try to fold that space in half, fold it like that, and then just make a tiny little cut just to get through the fabric. The reason I say that is because it's very easy to cut too far. And then just finish clipping out the space for your buttonhole like that. So I'm going to do my other one. Okay, so now I've got my 2 buttonholes. This one needs to be just a little bit bigger. I can't really show you on this video. I wanted y'all to learn how to do it by hand. And so you can YouTube, you can do a search for blanket stitch, or I think you can even put in buttonhole, making a buttonhole using a blanket stitch. But I don't have a way to zoom in real close to show you how to do one. But there are videos on YouTube. I did look them up that show how to do a blanket stitch. Here's one that I showed y'all in class. So this is kind of how it will look once it's done. And you can see I did not try to make mine perfectly neat or whatever. It's just sealing the edge of the fabric for your buttonhole so that it's just a finished piece there. Okay, so that's what you're going to do, is you're going to make a blanket stitch around that hole. And then, to put our button on, we just take our piece of chalk, make sure this is nice and flat the way it would be, you know, buttoned together. Stick our chalk in our buttonhole and just make a mark on the other side of the fabric. And that's where our button will be. Now sewing on a button is simple. Y'all all did that really easy. So the only thing that I showed y'all that's maybe a little bit different, well, I don't have my button in here with me, was I told y'all to take a pin like this, a straight pin, and just put it on the fabric like that. Okay, then you're going to make sure you don't sew through everything. Lay your button on there, and then just sew your button in the way I showed you. And the reason for that is so that after the button is sewed on, then you're going to pull your pin out. Remember, you're going to lay the button on top of the pin and sew it in through the holes, just like we did right here. And when you pull the pin out, there's actually just a tiny bit of looseness. It's not sewed down tight against your fabric. And it leaves just enough space for the thickness of a piece of fabric. And that's how we make our pillow cover. I'm going to show you this one finished in just a minute.
So many times I've come up to a situation.
Alright, so here's mine after I've sewed it together. And remember, this is what the one we did in class, this is how it should look. Just a simple cover, and then we did 2 buttons to hold it together. Now I did, and let's see what this looks like putting this Ella made this. She did a really good job. And let's put our, okay, so our video cut off and we're back. I'm already in my pajamas, but we're going to try to finish this up. So what I was saying was talking about going ahead and putting a pillow form in. Now I told y'all in class, a cheap way to get pillow forms is to go to a thrift store and get an old, ugly, dirty, stained pillow for like 50 cents or whatever, and cut the cover off, or if you're lucky and it's a removable one like this, and then just take the part from the inside. Now do not do that if it is like this. If you cut it open and it's like this, do not put that in your washing machine. But if it's a contained pillow form like this, just put it in a lingerie bag like this and put it in your washing machine and wash it. Let it dry overnight. Okay, so here's a pillow form I have. So we're going to put it in our cover that we just made. And that's why I wanted y'all to make it this way, so you would know how to make something that you can take off and wash. It's just way more handy. Pillows get dirty. But also I did it so y'all could learn how to do a button and a buttonhole. So let's put this in there to see how it looks. And then I'm going to explain why I did things different on that one. So there we go. That's how just the plain that we made, that's how it'll look. Okay, so I made this one obviously a lot bigger. That was a 16 by 16 finish, so it's probably 17 by 17 cut out. I actually cut this one out 25 by 25. And then I sewed it together just like that, but then here's where I did different. Instead of buttons, I did 2 ties, just to show you the options. And I just sewed it on where my buttons would have been. Okay, and then here's something else I did different. I went 2 inches from the edge, and I top stitched all the way around, 2 inches from the edge. I'm going to show y'all the reason I did it. So I'm going to put a pillow form in there. And here is another pillow that we got that someone was throwing away, probably because it's tore right here. The zipper's busted out, but that was really all that was wrong with it. But we got lucky, and this one has a down-filled actual duck or goose feathers. Very luxurious. But the feathers are poking through. So what I will probably do, since I made this out of a thin fabric, I'll probably take me like a piece of canvas or denim and just cut me 2 squares and sew them together and put this inside it before I put it in my pillow form because of the feathers, because they will poke through. But I'm just going to show you right now real quick how that made a different look, just top stitching 2 inches around the edge. Show y'all all different kinds of things you can do when you're making your pillow cover. So just stick that in there, work the pillow into the edges, and I love the down-filled pillows because they, no matter what you do, they always come back. They keep their shape really good. Okay, so we're going to tie our ties together. And I can see right now that I wished I would have sewed those ties a little further down. But it can, you know, that can be the back or it can be the front if you want it to be decorative. And here's the front. Now see what that did different? It gave me an edge on my pillow. So it gave a totally different look, just cutting it out bigger and top stitching 2 inches around the side. Or you could top stitch 1 inch, you know. Just whatever. That gives it a totally different look. We have a totally different looking pillow than this. But this was a 20 by 20 pillow form. Now, that is exactly what you do when you make a pillow sham. See, it's just our front piece. Of course, it's rectangle shaped. The 2 pieces in the back, the overlap, top stitch 2 inches around the edge, and you've got a pillow sham. So now you know how to make pillow shams as well. Now, here is something also different, a little bit different. Talking about this kind of pillow. If you get this kind of pillow at a thrift store, and I've already cut this open, and this is polyester fiber fill, and it's loose. So let me show how you can use that if you want to make a pillow with that. Here is still almost the same concept. This is a placemat that I bought for like 25 cents, 50 cents. It was on clearance. And I cut out a piece of fabric the same size. And then I took 2 strips of fringe. And I'm going to put them on each side. And remember what we've been learning about when you flip something out, right side out, how it changes how you think it's going to be. When you put your fringe in, the part you're going to sew on the edge is going to be right here, the part you're going to sew in. Make sure your fringe part is inside, pointed this way. See how it's pointed towards the middle? First time I done this, I sewed it in like that, I turned it right side out, and my fringe was inside my pillow. So, it doesn't matter if you do it wrong, that's how you learn. And when it's a fringe like this, I always scoot it in a little bit on the sides so that when I'm sewing this way, it doesn't catch it. And then I just put my other piece, remember, right sides together. And then here's what would be a little bit different. We would sew all the way around. Well, we'd start like right here, sew all the way around, and then stop before we met the end of our seam. We'd leave about a 4 to 6 inch opening. Now where's the one? Okay, here it is. Here's one that I already sewed together. So I was doing 2 that matches. So see, here's my opening that I left right here. See, this is not called the envelope or the fold over pillow. Will not be removable. So we're going to turn this right side out. See, I left my opening, and the opening is for 2 things. First of all, so we can turn our pillow right side out. Now, this is similar to how we did our storage case cover, you know, and our apron, turning it right side out. And there's what our pillow will look like. And it can be reversible. But this type stuffing, we can take it, stuff it in a pillow like that. So this will not be a removable cover if you want to do that type. And I'll take all of that, fill it in here, get it nice and tight, and then I will either whip stitch this by hand or just put it on the edge of my machine. You know, I might want to use brown thread so it won't be very noticeable, and just fold it in like I showed y'all on the case and the apron, and just sew a little seam to seal it. And so that's making a pillow that's the cover's not removable. So let's look at some, and here's one more. Here's one I did. This is also a removable cover. See, I put a piece of welting cord on the edge. And then, there's all kinds of things you can do to your throw pillows. I took a scrap piece of fabric and laid it on that front piece, obviously before everything was sewed together, and just sewed it on there, gathered it a little bit on this side, sewed me a piece of trim on. Then I'm pulling it up like that, taking a store-bought tassel, wrapping it around, now let's put our pillow in there and see what that looks like. And that's why you kind of want to measure your pillow form before you make your cover, because you can actually make it too small. And you think, you can get that pillow in there, but this cover is nearly too small for this pillow. And there we go. See? Just changing the basic concept of what I showed y'all in class and just adding a little here and there, changing a little bit, and you get all different pillows. Now this is why I like to do the buttons on the back or the tie, because you can just leave it with nothing. And your pillow's turned this way, nobody's going to see that, but it drives me nuts the way this gap's open and the pillow sort of concaves. It always leans forward like that. So see, if that was pulled, and with a snap or a button, a tie, even Velcro sewed right there, and when it's pulled together tight in the back, you can see it puffs out in the front. And that's all the things you can do to make pillows.